All right, good afternoon, folks. At this stop, I want to talk about stream buffers and how stream buffers, especially for the DNR and the way we manage our lands with our habitat conservation plan, are extremely important to soil health and reduction of soil erosion. Not only is it primarily for fish habitat and clean water, and because this stream, even though it's too steep to have fish in it, is a substantial stream. It may also even be seasonal. It dries up in the summertime, but it feeds other larger streams and has a lot of important influences on other streams that do have fish in them. And and fish aren't the only creature basically that we're dealing with here by protecting these riparian areas. We're protecting also some like salamanders, newts, a lot of frogs and other organisms like that. So we're on the Huzza timber sale that I oftentimes I've talked about. There's a nice viewpoint up top there, and if you can remember or look at back of any of those videos, you see these strips of trees, of groups of trees, and these are those riparian buffers. This is a type 4 stream, and so we put a 100-foot buffer on either side of this stream. And this stream basically starts just about 100 feet or so up there, and then so we're kind of at the top of the stream. It's just starts as a seep up there, and so we kind of went up and around 100 feet above the stream, and then came down both sides all the way until the sail ends, and this stream flows into a wetland down at the bottom. And so in this area, we have now, 200 plus feet, 250 so feet of area that's not disturbed at all, really, on this timber sale. Now, we will have some edge effects along the edges here. This one's not so bad because it has another buffered stream right below it. And so any wind patterns are gonna hit, that are coming this direction are going to hit that buffer first, protecting this buffer slightly. So we're not going to have as much wind throw. As far as soil conservation goes, though, we will get a little bit of I guess changes in the temperature and moisture and influences on the soils that are on the edge here, as opposed to soils that are in the middle or close, further in several feet from this buffered area. And here you can see this culvert kind of backed up quite a bit. I can tell you, I'm not going to get down in there, but I can tell you that there's compacted glacial till there, which is not allowing the water to seep through or to percolate through this area. And the culvert could have been buried probably a little bit deeper, so we don't have so much standing water. Standing water in your culverts or in your ditches can be an issue as well, because it can cause the roadbed to become saturated with water and then just kind of start to break apart. So through this section here that was part of the VRH, the variable retention harvest, you can see the sweet tea sail back there that we can see from up top as well. And you can see the leaf tree groups over there, and then you can also see where the raging river goes behind that knob back there, because it's a large group of leaf trees that goes that direction towards 18, which then cuts along the power lines back there and going down south towards Enumclaw. So you can imagine with these buffers on these streams like this, 100 feet on each side, you know, going for, this one's very similar to where it starts here, goes all the way down, you know, several hundred feet, if not thousands of feet, down into the next wetland area down there where you can start to see some hardwood trees. Then there's a road, and then there's another huge wetland, and then you have the sweet tea sale. You can't see that other large wetland in there, but you can kind of see a lot of the older timber that sticks up. Will never cut around that area because of the buffer from that wetland down there. But here, you know, we end up with buffers like this. You know, when this sale started out, it was around 100 acres or so. And once I came in and I typed all the streams and put the buffers on and put my leaf tree groups in and all that, you know, we ended up setting aside around 30 to 40 acres of this area. So, you know, 30% of almost all of our timber sales that we set up are like this. And they, you know, so we end up retaining, you know, leaving basically, you know, 30% of the landscape behind based on our habitat conservation plan and how we manage the forests. And so that has a huge impact on soil productivity, soil health, and, you know, keeping that soil going for the next generation of trees. If you can imagine, yes, we've probably changed the organisms and microorganisms especially that are living in this soil. However, just right there, we haven't really changed too much in the organisms in the buffered area. And so over time, those organisms will start coming back into this area here once it starts to grow up and become a baby forest again. So a good example of these buffers that we use quite extensively for these types of streams here at the DNR, which also help in a lot of ways with soil health, reducing erosion, you know, protecting clean water, fish, and a whole host of other things. All right, so here we have a good example of what I was talking about just right down the road there. In between those two buffers, we find ourselves in between two more buffers here for streams. There's another stream up there. Part of the reason why this ditch here is running so well right now is that seep happens to be kind of at the bottom of this slope here, and then hits the ditch, which this is a great example of a good ditch that's keeping the water off of the road, and it's sloped in toward the ditch. Here, you can see crown of the road in the middle is great, so you've got water that slopes off to this side and water that slopes off to this side, and typically we're not having a lot of surface runoff on this road, which is super important. Here I'm going to talk about managing water and how important it is for roads and culvert placements and things like that. So this culvert was put in an excellent spot because you can see water just seeping out of the side of the hill here. And the reason it's doing that is because, so one other reason is it's nice to have a culvert just a couple hundred feet from a stream like that up there, especially at this kind of slope. You know, we kind of look at you know, about every 10 vertical feet that you drop, you want to have either like a water bar or a culvert or something like that to deal with the water movement. so that the water's not picking up too much energy and causing problems on the outlet. You can see here, these do get clogged up fairly easily over time, but looking right here, you can see, boom, I'm hitting, ouch, literally compacted glacial till, like we've seen in several other cases before. But this shows you what happens here when, you know, you've got your granular A horizon, your B1 horizon, and then boom, you hit this compacted till material, and the water just starts seeping out there. And so what's going to happen is this is going to keep slumping off here during major storms, when there's a lot of water coming through here, and just over time and gravity pulling it down. But that's one of the reasons why we put this culvert here, is to help deal with that seep there. And also, it was a good distance away from that stream there, where we're getting enough relief. I believe there's a seep up there in between as well. And so other things that we're doing to ensure, you know, what we want here in the outlet of this stream is we want the water to kind of disperse into our the forest floor at an even rate. So here we've even added a flume, which is working rather well. And this flume here is basically alleviating or dispersing the energy, if you will, from the water that's falling there. If we didn't have the flume, the water would be cutting into the bank here, eroding all the soil away, channelizing this area and creating basically another stream that, if you could imagine, if we came back in here 40 years from now to cut these trees again, and we had another type 4 stream in the middle of these two type 4 streams with a 100-foot buffer on either side, we wouldn't have very much timber to cut here anymore. And, you know, in 40 years too, who knows what the policy is going to be, you know. So our policy is to do the best thing that we know how to do, to manage water and the energy from water, so that it doesn't cause the addition of another stream and this water is being dispersed. You can see there's not much channelization. There's a little bit of sediment buildup there, but you know, it also, the loggers did a good job of putting this pile here as well, and there's a lot of bark here to help kind of soak it up. But I imagine we'll come back here in 40 years and that will not be a stream. The water will continue to be running through the flume. Hopefully, if the flume's still there. It's one of the things we do check on quite a bit, is the outlets and inlets to culverts to make sure they're cleaned. So just a quick stop here to talk about roads. You want water off the surface, you want culverts placed where you have seeps, because if you could imagine, you know, let's say we placed this culvert 50 feet up the road there, and this seep was happening here, and there wasn't anything to capture all that water, it would be seeping, it would be literally soaking into the road bed here, and this part of the road might be slumping in there. And then eventually, because we are on kind of relatively steep ground here at about a 35% slope, but just also the road bank is quite far above the forest floor there, you know, we would have way more issues with this road kind of probably slumping off the edge here if we didn't have that culvert there.